Hi, this is Lynn Schnebley with Educating with Wisdom, and I am the ambassador for Heaven's creating and protecting goddesses and archangels over life. Good morning. Dear Heavenly Father, please help me to do this introduction in a most expeditious fashion, because I'm going to add this onto something else, and I've already drawn things out. As I was working on my case recently, I received and I'm trying to work on my case. I've been doing this now for months to get it out, and you can see that I'm communicating with my daughter about what's going on with the hurricane and where I'm at. And then all of a sudden it says, homosexual mean heterosexual men, multiple partners and similarities. All right? So I'm going to just add this very quickly, then I'm going to attach it to another one. Then I have a longer piece that works with this. But I did not put that homosexual mean heterosexual men, multiple partner similarities. This is something that my monitors added to this. All right. And it didn't send, it wouldn't resend. So this is predominantly for straight men and straight women, obviously for heterosexual people, and it completely says in Revelations in Daniel, as well as elsewhere, that they will try to corrupt the entire population. I've already said that the more mistakes we make, the more energy we use up, because then we have to keep cleaning it up. I'd like you to take a look at this for a moment, and I'm speaking to heterosexual men. Let's take a look at the people that are most involved with HIV. And other than the two trans men to women that are there, we're all looking at homosexual men. It's basically homosexual men. So why is it the heterosexual community is constantly bailing out and dealing with normalizing homosexual men when most of the AIDS are there, most of the drug addiction, I mean, there's a lot of drug addiction, there's a lot of depression, and in the past it was linked to, first it was normal in Rome, but then again, so was crucifixion. So, you can't disaggregate risk-taking behavior like that from other behaviors and gross misogyny for women. So why have they normalized gross pornography and homosexual behaviors, including anal sex for men and women that are heterosexual, to legitimize them? And I've already said that the Vatican is behind some of this. And they are. And they say, but wait a minute, they say that this is wrong. Oh, but the Jesuits are telling you, many of them are telling you that this is right, that it's normal behavior. And the rest of the Vatican, if 80% of them sitting at the Vatican level or 60 and above are homosexuals, they're doing this. 90% of all homosexuals engage in anal sex, and anal sex is the big pusher of this problem. So again, I'm attaching this onto a larger body, but I wanted to draw to your attention the study that came out, and then I'm going to add this to what I already have. There is little discussion if these genetic variations are more likely with individuals who have mental illness or asocial personality disorders, which earlier clinicians linked this deviancy with. A higher proportion of the LGBTQ community engages in self-medicating and substance abuse, and they have higher incidences of emotional, behavioral, personality, psychiatric disorders than the general population. There has been a link to genes which control the thyroid, baldness, and mental illness. Yet, some of these genetic patterns shared by varied expression, heterosexual men who have many sexual partners and homosexual men who tend to have many partners, which we now know is, we call it sex addiction. It can be narcissism. It can be bipolar. Would bring us back into an earlier psychological and psychiatric discussion of psychiatric emotional character disorders. Ms. Schnebley can give a logical response. So while we're looking at, even though we know there is this overlap that goes on, while they're checking for gene similarities, there's no discussion of the gene similarities found in these high-risk male heterosexual populations, and then cross that gene study with psychiatric illness. And that's the study that needs to happen. If we take a look at these high-risk areas and the people that are more involved in terms of drug addiction and all these other things, and we take a look at heterosexual men that are involved in all these things, and most of them are involved in drug addiction, or they have other kinds of, a psychopath doesn't have to do drugs. They can just do it, right? And manage. So if we look at these and then do the genetic links that cross over that, this is what they're not discussing with you. So then there are stressors that can help kick these things off. These are other discussions that need to be had. There you go. Thank you. Oh, let's turn this off. Oh, I'm back on. I didn't. Hi, I'm Lynn Schnebley with Educating with Wisdom, and I'm the ambassador for Heaven's creating and protecting goddesses and archangels over life. Dear Heavenly Father, Mother, please help me to do this in a most expeditious fashion because the last video I took was way too long. Okay, today I'm reaching out to men and women, but I'm really reaching out more to men because I think women are going to have a hard time and they need a hand stepping up to the bat here. As well, you need to be guided in some ways. Recently, there was, well, when I was working on my case, again, and we were going down for the storm for Dorian. We were going to my brother's because his house is almost like a fortress for these storms. So he invited us to go down into the Miami Homestead area. They weren't really going to get hit. We were. The real possibility of us closer to West Palm Beach could. So he said, why don't you come down here? So my daughter contacted me, and I'll show you what I was working on. Whoopsie daisy. My daughter contacted me. Here we go. It's the 2nd of September. How are you guys doing with the storm? I'm at Uncle Pete's, love Mom. And then look down there. It says homosexual mean and heterosexual men with multiple partners similarities. Now, notice I did not actually write that and put that into my daughter. My monitors put this into our thing. And when it didn't send, it said re-entry and it didn't send. And it won't send. It isn't going to send. And I didn't put that in there. But what had happened is that on that day, I had opened up a new file recently to again begin working on my case so that I can get it out, because they keep asking for it so that we can have the Union of North America, we can bring the British and the Australians over, we can open up Africa, and a whole lot of good stuff can come out of this, as well as addressing the 7 sins. And this is something that the Vatican clergy and the LGBTQ do not want you to know. So look at the bottom, homosexual mean. This has nothing to do. I didn't send it to my daughter and I didn't try to send it. But before I went on and worked on my case, because I have everything time-stamped, I couldn't go on and work on it because it would mean that it was updated. And then you would think, okay, well, when did she do this? Again, I said that I took too long. There's an awful lot of confusion. I'm just going to stop here for a moment and say, I never used to believe in reincarnation, except I have been. And I never believed in it. And it's taken me a long time to come to this point where I can say, I accept this. And I thought, okay, this isn't true. It's not found in Christianity. It's not found in Judaism. We know that it's found in Buddhism. It's found in other religions. It's found in certain Egyptian religions. It's certainly found in Hinduism. But it's something that, like we said, didn't happen in Christianity. And it does. And it does speak about it happening. In Revelations, it says that the dead will come back. In Revelations, it speaks about this. It speaks about reincarnation and part of the Gospels. And the Gospels and Revelation have all been rewritten by the hands of Rome and by others around it to make it acceptable to men and to make it acceptable to Rome. Remember, the Holy Roman Catholic Church is the Roman Roman Universal Church, which means they threw all of their gods in together, gave them different names, and threw out the female gods, and men accepted everything because you didn't want women having any real power because that would take control away from men. So one of the things they got away with was Artemis of Ephesus. They replaced her with Sybil. Anyway, I'm digressing. So there is a whole discussion in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they do discuss reincarnation. They talk about how the dead come back. And they talk about the end times, how the dead come back. And Edgar Cayce says, in 1958 odd, which is the year I was born, no new soul will come into the earth that hasn't been a human being beforehand. That means we've all been human beforehand. So as I speak to younger people, let me say the following, and which doesn't mean the older people that are around today haven't been here before. You have been. Okay, but from this point forward, everybody you haven't gone to heaven. And John lets you know, the end of the Gospel of John lets you know that the beloved is being left behind. John is actually the beloved. How do you do? I got left behind. Here we go. What they're saying is that you have to learn your lessons, and you have to learn your lessons of cause and effect. And until this point of time, where we knew that the sun was not the center of the universe, and Draco is not the center of the galaxy, and Leo is not the center of the galaxy. The galaxy is up by the top of Sagittarius, and you all go around then, and the black hole and all the barking orders come out of there, then great music costs. So all these areas that you've been worshiping, you should not be worshiping because they're not the center of anything, which drops all of this occult practice because it's all based on. That's why they use all this other kind of nonsense. But sitting at the top of that occult practice is also the issue of homosexuality, which is what we're getting into here. And I'm still digressing, having prayed about this, because it's in my file. It was in part what led me to the Law Society. So now speaking to straight men, because I have to speak to straight men and straight women, remember we've been bred to become docile, just like animals. They took out the more radical women like me, and they tried to get rid of me too. And we've bred men to be more aggressive. And now a lot of us are back here to learn our lessons so that we can then go on and join heaven and bring heaven to earth and not hell to earth. Because right this minute we have Sheol and Hades and hell all coming up to earth, and that's why we have drag queen story hours that look like demons. They're back. They're back. All right. Some of us need a lot of help, like them. Some of the rest of us need a little bit of help, like most of you. So I'm reaching out to most of the guys and the women that need just a little bit of help, but especially the guys, because they're going to need help, the women here, and then the women are going to have to help the men in other areas. In terms of homosexuality, you're going to have a hard time breaking women from the whole homosexual thing, because women, it's like they have convinced us that it's easier for us to talk to them. That has to stop, because that's not true, because they don't like us. And then they make nasty skits about us and call us drag queens, and they give us awful fashion, and they tell us we're not beautiful enough, or that we're not dramatic enough, or that we're not this enough. They don't like natural women. They don't like that. They're not interested in having someone they can go for a hike with, or they can go and have children with. They're not interested in that. All right? So when we look at this research, they're telling you that really only 1 to 2% of the population is really, truly gay men. Well, then how did we come to think that this huge number are propaganda? The other thing that we need to look at is the issue of your mother, because the Catholic Church and a lot of them, and a lot of, if you have a boy, it's all set. So we want the Virgin Mary and everybody to bring us up to heaven. God will pay attention to the Virgin Mary. They're going to let us into heaven because our mother would never not let us into heaven. But we're not letting chaos people and people that break the law go into heaven. So coming back to straight men, homosexuality. 90% of them engage in anal sex, and that's where most of your AIDS is picked up and transmitted, through anal sex. So why are they telling us that it's okay to engage in anal sex? That's how most people can develop cancer of the anus. So why are they telling us as heterosexuals that we should engage in anal sex? And the thing that prevents them from getting AIDS, if we take a look at where the advertisement is geared for, these are transgender men to women. The rest of these are AIDS. Let me ask you something. Why are we supporting this? Why? Why? And I'm going to have to restart this one and put a why in there. Why are we supporting this? I have, and they know that I have this information there because I've been attacked by the transgender community as well as the LGBTQ. I have a longer version of this that I have there. And I would just like to say to the straight men that if you had hundreds of sex partners, people would say that there is something wrong with you. So why is it okay for these people to be sexually promiscuous, to have higher incidences of drug use, risky sexual behavior, all of those things? And why are we not linking it to mental illness? In fact, when they do that research that say, oh, there's a problem with the olfactory, and oh, there may be a small problem with this, why is no one doing what we used to do? And that is looking up the comorbidities and covalence with mental illness. Because mental illness, there's a lot of mental illness in this population. So why are we trying to treat a population that engages in a lot of destructive, riskiness, and that's tearing the population apart, our population, by setting up all kinds of ambiguities and not knowing right from wrong, and maybe we should try this, and maybe we should let your kids do it, and maybe we should change your children. Why are we, and it's destroying heterosexual populations, which, by the way, Obama and his group, Kill Whitey, look at how they are destroying white women from having children. I'm talking to men. Why are we allowing that population to reign? Why? So we're going to go in and take a look at that work. I already showed you this. Let's get out of me. Is there a gay gene? There is no gay gene. When did this study actually first come out? There is no gay gene. There is no gay gene. All right, there's no gay gene. There's a series of genes, and I'm going to go in and open this up because they're saying, brand new study, came out August the 31st, but when did this study actually come out? May up to that, retiring the gay gene hypothesis. All right, no gay gene. There is a social influence. It may have something to do with olfactory. It says no single drive. Okay. And remember, in the past, it's saying these people used to be bisexual, but having a lot of different sex. So when did this study actually come out? Because I have it in my research, October the 20th. Now, I just want to come back here and take a look at this. This person was his conversion therapy. He just recently came out, and there was a person who was a Jesuit priest saying, good, conversion therapy doesn't work. But hey, if they're lying to you about the Adam and Eve story and there was no real fall, that was something that was developed by Greeks who were very homosexual. They came up with that, and there was no real fall, and the Jews put that into their storyline. In fact, it says now they become like us, knowing right from wrong, but the men don't want you to know right from wrong. Why would someone who's really a homosexual be involved in this therapy? And why doesn't he tell the truth about the lie of the Adam and Eve story? In fact, why doesn't the Catholic Church tell the truth about the lie of the Adam and Eve story and change the paradigm so that people wouldn't be even considering this? Why aren't they being honest? Because they don't love you? Because they're narcissistic? Because they're hedonist? Because they have psychopathy and sociopathy? So this is really interesting. He comes out as gay. He's been listening to everyone's confessions for all this time. He's been looking and listening to how they enjoy homosexuality. And the same is true looking at the Jesuits. They surround themselves with homosexuals. There is nothing here today about homosexual and psychopathology. But if we look at cultures that there's a lot of homosexuality in, whether it's ancient Rome, whether it is the Greeks, they have sex with their slaves, they have crucifixion, they do all kinds of horrible things. Horrible. Again, there's nothing here. But what was really interesting about his name, oh, I remember what that is. The K-R. Oh. McCrae. And there is an S. Look at this. Let's put us on pause for a moment. Oh, I didn't put us on pause. His name, McCrae. Look at this. This is also the name of an extremely, the McCrae game. We don't even know if that man is real. And we don't. We don't know that this isn't another one of their false news game kinds of things that they come up with. Because they come up with them and the McCrae game. Who has a name called McCrae game? This is a game for them? A herpes simplex virus. This is extremely virulent. This is, and how do you get it? What is it? And they think it's a joke? The genetic determinants that lead to differences in the pathology? Okay. So how are we getting it? Oh, great. And it's his game? Let's come back here. Being a receptive partner during anal sex is the highest risk activity for getting HIV. Period. Anal sex, okay? The dominant person can get it, but and what? You have to spend weeks preparing for it in order to do it right, putting different levels of plugs in order to stretch out your anus, anal sex, and anal cancer. All right, the most common risk factor for anal cancer is being infected with human papilloma virus, and it is a sexually transmitted. Transgender women and HIV. There we go. 14% of transgender women. And what we know is that people that are African American and transgender, that incidence is much higher. LGBTQ and drug use. Okay? It's much higher than in the regular population. So and we know that this is part of self-medication about LGBTQ teens, because they are engaging in risky behavior that is not good for them, and I don't care who's doing it. LGBTQ and I spelled that wrong. Okay. Now let's go in and take a look at my work. This is one which was done here, and I don't have that additional information. Remember, I actually started a group of them, which I have in my previous one that goes back to July 16th. But this was started here, I closed it out here, and I picked this one up here on the 1st. That's a new one. So let's go in and see which one is there. Auto recover. To date, no homosexual gene has been found after over 40 years of searching for genetic markers indicating homosexuality collectively. There is little discussion of these genetic variations are more likely with individuals who have mental illness or asocial personality disorders, which earlier clinicians linked this deviancy with. A higher proportion of the LGBTQ community engages in self-medicating and substance abuse, and they have higher incidences of emotional behavior, personality, and psychiatric disorders than the general population. There has been a link to genes which control the thyroid, baldness, and mental illness, yet some of these genetic patterns share by varied expression heterosexual men who have many sexual partners and homosexual men who tend to have many partners. Let me say that again. Many sexual partners, heterosexual men who have many partners, and homosexual men who tend to have many partners. This would bring us back to an earlier psychological and psychiatric discussion of psychiatric and emotional character. Disorders. Ms. Schneble can give logical explanations to each of these, which is not to say that there is a small number of truly same-sex behavior who can only be same-sex. But that does not mean that you should engage in that risky behavior. Okay, thank you.